Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are your multi-award winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast, and we are back to look ahead to everything Bournemouth to come on Sunday and give you the very latest news on everything surrounding Tottenham Hotspur Football Club in the latest edition of the soap opera. I'm joined by three of the soap opera's very well fine-tuned supporters who are turning up for more. God, they deserve a medal, don't they? I'm joined by wonderful David Harris over at the Irish Hotspur. I'm joined by Ash from the Spurs Kings. And I'm joined by Jonathan Hamme on this edition of Last Word on Spurs. We're going to try and guide us, steer us, and navigate us in the crazy world of Tottenham that we have got no choice in supporting because there is no get out. Like I say, there's been a lot that's happened over the course of the last 24, 48 hours. Spurs have, of course, lost the first leg of what was billed to be the biggest game of Spurs' season to date in the Europa League against AZ Alkmaar. It was billed as being one of Ange Postecoglou's one or two massive games in what was going to save his job. I've seen a lot of fans in the last 24 hours that were firmly in Ange's camp, slowly start to change their views on whether he's the right man for the club long term. I've said this on numerous shows that I think with Tottenham it goes beyond the manager. I think it sets right at the very, very top in terms of just the mentality at the football club. And is there a reason why, once again, we're here having to dissect and discuss where we are in Tottenham season following such another disappointment and what that now means for Bournemouth on Sunday and how Spurs approach that game, given, of course, the turnaround time between that and, of course, the AZ return leg back at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. There'll be a feeling for a lot of Tottenham fans out there that can Tottenham really afford to be resting players and go into AZ with 3 defeats in a row? How does that help mentality? Look, let's bring in the guys that are unfortunately having, like all of us, to go through the supportive nature of this football club. Johnny, let's bring you in. Like I say, I know it's been a really tough how many years since you've been born into this?
Too long.
It's tough. I mean, look, it's really tough at the moment, and we appreciate for a lot of fans out there that they are really disillusioned by the football club that they love. And I think many may not have been surprised by that performance against AZ Alkmaar because we've seen it time and time again that in big games, this Tottenham team, for whatever reason, whether it's down to tactics, whether it's down to mentality, failed to turn up. But the reality about it is that Tottenham did have 8 days to recharge, prepare every tactical aspect that was maybe coming in this game. Ange Postecoglou, for a number of months now, had a real strong squad available to him. Bar Dejan Kulusevski, of course, did miss the game through to injury. That was confirmed during the week. Spurs, in that game itself, only registered a single shot on target, or you could argue it's a miss-hit anyway, that arrived in the 87th minute. How do you surmise, Johnny, where we are going into yet another big weekend for the football club and a really big next 4 or 5 days with a returning of AZ sandwiched in between, of course, that Bournemouth game as well?
Well, first thing I'd like to say is I think the big up to the fans who travelled over there. I was gutted I couldn't make it. Unfortunately, something happened, so I couldn't go. And I was really upset about it. But I'm now more upset for the fans that travelled there and had to witness that. And Ange will not be rolling out saying, were you not entertained tonight? Maybe they had jet lag. I'm not sure. It's quite a long schlap out to Holland. The excuses, straight out the Arteta excuse book. The grass. There are no excuses for that performance last night. We're talking about an AZ team that were missing 3 of their best attackers, Van Bommel, Ibrahim Sadiq, who came on just the last bit. The guy who replaced Van Bommel, he was taken out after about 10, 15 minutes by a tackle from Bergvall. Yet we still couldn't get a grip in the game. We were clueless. I looked at Ange. I thought to myself, it's half time. It's a terrible first half. Now's your time, mate. Now is your time to motivate this team. And he can't. And, look, we understand the players have got to rise to the occasion, but it's the manager's job to inspire and to motivate those players. And they should have been coming out that tunnel for this game, the biggest game of the season, probably the biggest game in 2 or 3 years, probably. And it was like a damn squib. It was like nothing was resting on this game. And I just don't understand any of it. I mean, he needs to do the honourable thing. The issue is, has he got any honour left and fall on his sword? That the free kick, I'll tell you what's that really said it all. That free kick, Maddison's free kick, when he lined up with Sonny to take it, and it was like a shit show. I mean, I couldn't believe what I was watching. I saw him, you take off Maddison when we need some creativity, and you leave on yellow-carded Bentancur. He's still playing Tell as an out-and-out 9 when we can clearly see the poor kid can't hold up the ball. Players are going backwards. And I just think, when I looked at Troy Parrott on the other side, the player that Ange said wasn't good enough to even warrant coming here and trying out in the, pre-season, because I felt that we should have given him a chance. He scored 17 goals this season. Yes, it's in the Dutch league, but we sold him for £6 million. And I was watching him in that game. And yeah, he didn't score. And yeah, he fluffed his lines with Vicario and made that great save. But he was a handful. He was a handful all night. And he worked his arse off along that front line. And if we had another 4 or 5 players like him in that team last night, we wouldn't have ended up with that 1-0 defeat. And let's be honest, we've been really lucky. We're going into that game against, at White Hart Lane next week with every chance of turning it round. And I believe we will turn it round. I have no doubts we will turn it round. Yeah. But we really shouldn't be in the position there. It was only poor finishing. And they began to tire, mainly, I think, because the fact they've, while we've been resting and planning for this game, you wouldn't think it.
At 8 days and AZ have played twice during that period.
Yeah, and one game I think was extra time and penalties.
To
get to the final of the cup. No, it was absolutely shambolic. I could go on, but let the boys come in now and say their bit, because otherwise I'm just going to go into a really heavy rant. I'd say Vicario, though. Big up to him. I know what's happened after the match. But without his 2 fantastic saves, this would have been a lot worse.
Unbelievable.
And I honestly think that he could have been marching out that door tonight, Ange Postecoglou, last night had it been 3-0.
Yeah, we'll come on to Vicario, what maybe would some suggest be a misjudgment on full time. Dave, bringing you in, lovely to have you back. I know, listen, it's probably the most broken I've seen you, but then I've seen you after a lot of these cup exits or cup defeats, and it's a familiar story, isn't it? I mean, look, we've seen Spurs in Europe really at times not look too great. I think we've seen away from home some of our displays down the years. I think you turn your attention to kind of the likes of Ghent, Dynamo Zagreb away, but even this season, we, to be honest with you, got away with it to some degree against Ferencvaros. Galatasaray at times ripped us apart, and obviously we played them away from home. Rangers, we nearly threw it away there. Let's be honest about it. It was a rescue out late on from Kulusevski that got us a point. We just see a combination, Dave, of really timid, scared, confident, looks drained. There's a real lack of bravery about this Tottenham side. And I think what's hard for some to decipher is that we had a lot of the players back. Yes, we've lost Kulusevski. Question marks as to how Mikey Moore doesn't even get a minute on the field as to being one of the players that really tore AZ apart at the time when we first faced them earlier in the competition. I mean, we'll come on to the manager shortly, but Dave, what are we witnessing at the moment with Tottenham in general for you? Because there's so much to it. It's not just one thing, is it? You go from the very top downwards, and from the manager to the coaching staff to the players, back up to the owners. I mean, it's not just one thing with Tottenham. It's a collective number of issues, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a collective number of issues. Look, first of all, last night's performance, I take great offence to that, actually, last night. Postecoglou's been parroting all season long. When we get our injuries back, you're going to see much different, okay? We had a lot of our players back last night. We didn't see anything different. We seen more of the same. They had 8 days off to prepare, and that's the energy that them players are turning up with. We could sit here and we could blame Postecoglou. Look, there is a number of things I pulled out on him last night. To be honest, I've been questioning him for a little while now, but last night he completely lost me. You know, to leave, he made one sub at halftime, which was needed, but then he didn't follow up again until 70 minutes to make another couple of substitutions. He watched that from minute 1 all the way to 70 minutes before he really done anything about it. And I know that's his style of management. He wants the problem solving to become, you know, from within these players themselves on the pitch and stuff like that. But with such a young squad, this is where he needs to realize he needs to adapt and be a little bit different. Roll his sleeves up. You know, if things were as bad as they were last night, many fans are calling it the worst performance of the season. He needs to be more active on that sideline. He needs to be screaming at people, pulling them around the pitch, putting them in, you know, telling them what he wants from them, bollock them if he needs to, you know, praise them if he needs to. He just sat there with his arms folded last night and allowed it to happen. Then you move on to them players as well. They also allowed it to happen, by the way. Everyone can sit here and pin everything on Postecoglou. But all we're going to do is be here 2 years down the line saying the exact same thing. We need to learn from our lessons. When we had Jose, everyone pinned all the problems on him. Same with Nuno and same with Conte. And we're the ones still sitting here today with the same problems at this football club. People need to wake up and realize Postecoglou is only a scapegoat. That's all the manager is at Tottenham Hotspur. They're a scapegoat for all of our problems. Then I move on to the players, and this is where I don't give them a free pass either. You know, a lot of people put up that clip of James Maddison and Sonny talking on the bench, moaning about the tactics. At the end of the day, they're the ones with the ball at their feet, not Postecoglou. They're the ones that can do something about it on the pitch, not Postecoglou. They're the ones that can get on the ball and skin their players and not pass it sideways, not pass it backwards, not Postecoglou. That's on them. Out of possession, Postecoglou said it today. In terms of what I'm asking them to do, it's very clear. In fact, some people are complaining it's too clear. That's how clear it is. Out of possession, not going on the press, which has been clear instruction from Postecoglou all season long, again, is on them and their willingness. But are we surprised? How many squads at Tottenham since Pochettino has not carried out the manager's tactics on the pitch? We've heard Jose Mourinho come out and say, I haven't asked him to play like that. We've heard Conte come out and say that. We've heard Postecoglou come out and say that. There's inherent problems at Tottenham Hotspur that are beyond Postecoglou. We have a culture where the dressing room is running the football club, which should not be the way. The minute the going gets tough, they absolutely crumble. They don't get going. They're not willing to muck in. They're not willing to dig in, and they're very happy to roll the manager over and allow him to take the blame all the time. But that comes from the top as well. He's listening too much to them players, and he's sacking the managers off the back of it. But mark my words, we will be here again in 2 years' time if we don't address the real issues. Yes, there's some things you can blame and question Postecoglou. He's the right man to lead us into next season. I think many people are at the point, no. But what we can't do is start getting into the rounds where we're blaming him for absolutely everything. You also have to put pressure on these players and these ownerships, because a lot of what I'm hearing around various, channels and socials, I've heard people question the same about Jose, Conte and Nuno. And we can't just keep making them the be-all and end-all. We've got to realise the problems are deeper in the club, and no manager is really ever going to be able to work out at this football club unless the problems are highlighted continuously. You can highlight Postecoglou as a problem, but be fair and also put it on them players and some of the decision-making within the club. We can sit here and blame him for playing Matisse Tell up front. Well, that's what the club gave him. He was looking for a striker here in January. That's what they gave him. I said here in January. I don't think he's the right signing. He's not the guy to take us on. As a striker, I think he's more of a winger. So again, this is what I'm saying. We can pin everything on Postecoglou, but it ain't all his fault. And that's just the reality of the situation. But that performance last night from the manager and from them players is a kick in the teeth. They sit there, moan about us support. 18 defeats this season. We're still here. We're still going to be here at the weekend. We don't get paid by this football club. None of us do. We pay to support this football club. They're still going to take their wage out. How about you do your job and you turn up and stop asking us for support? We've been supporting this crap for 5 years since Pochettino. Stop speaking. Stop coming out, blaming fans and everything else, and you do your job for once. Start winning games of football.
We'll definitely come on to a lot of these points, Dave, that you're mentioning, because I think you make a really important point there, that I think the reason why there has been so many that have remained behind Ange Postecoglou to date, maybe that's changed over the course of the last 24, 48 hours, is there's an admission, David, you've suggested, that everyone realises that it's not all the manager's fault. There's a magnitude and facets of why Spurs are where they are and why they've got the squad they've got and why they haven't quite got the calibre of players that they should have, what this football club should have in terms of its stature and what it befits. I mean, Ash, to bring you in, the thing about AZ is that, then listen, I want to put this in the most polite way I say this. They're not a top European side, but at the same time, they've been strong at home really all season. I think they have won 10 of their last 11 games coming into this one. And they beat every team they've come up against in the competition on their own turf. That include the likes of Roma, Galatasaray. That was also Jose Mourinho's Fenerbahce as well. They beat Ferencvaros. They beat Elfsborg. It was just a night where really, you know, Ange ball is normally based on being brave with the ball, being relentless, you know, making movement, finding creativity. There was just none of that, was there, Ash? There was absolutely none of the elements to what makes up Ange ball. And what you had really was players that were hiding behind opponents rather than making themselves available. And you know what? The argument has been from a lot of people that have wanted it really to work to Ange Postecoglou to date is let him have his squad, let him have time on the training ground. Well, look, he had 8 days preparation for this game. And in between that, AZ played twice. As Johnny said at the start, AZ were taken to, I think, penalties in one of those games. So, I mean, look, bar Kulusevski being absent, what's your thoughts on it, Ash? Where are we? Where are we in the life of Tottenham?
Yeah, no, look, Ricky is crazy because if you look at AZ's starting lineup, which wasn't fully strengthened, and then you looked at Spurs' starting 11, it doesn't really make sense how we could lose 1-0. Okay, put the result to one side, but it's the performance that's got a lot of fans rattled at the moment. That's what we can't understand. And if I look at the front three, that gives me all the answers I need to know, because all season, Son Heung-Min, our captain, has been underperforming. He's been blowing hot and cold, and it feels like the armband is weighing heavy on his arms. He's been played out wide as a winger, and we as a fan base can't decide whether Son is a forward, a striker, a centre forward, or a winger. Then you've got Johnson, Brennan Johnson. It feels like his goals are masking his performances, literally. And that's why people are saying you can't be too harsh on Johnson, because before it was he's too young. Now he's of age. It's no longer that, because he's scoring goals. You need to get behind him. He's putting goals win games. But when he doesn't score, what does he provide to the actual team? How does he help us in build-up? How does he help us in the final third? How does he help us change the momentum? You look at Tell, we've already mentioned him, versus Scarlett in terms of strength and hold-up. He hasn't got that. Then you look at their striker, as Johnny's already said about Parrott, he hasn't got a lot of physicality, but yet he was getting on the ball. He was getting shots off. He was getting 1v1s. He was becoming a nuisance. So you look at our front three, and I'm thinking, our front three surely costs way more. I saw Poku, in the involvement for AZ Alkmaar, a lot more than I saw any of our front players. Tell's being hooked off, so we can't even go into to Tell anymore, because now we've got an Odobert. Odobert's coming on, but again, that front three is not looking like it's working. It's not fluid for whatever reason, and I feel like this front three, where the wingers are asked to touch the touchline, they're not close enough to the goal to cause any devastation in terms of goal threat. Equally, out wide, are they being creative? They're not creating any chances out wide either. We're not seeing any crosses go into the boxes. We're not seeing any cutbacks. We're not seeing any balls fizzed into the box, into the 6-yard box. Then you look into the midfield. The midfield is nil point, non-existent. We cannot see any form of players getting on the ball, making things happen. And we spoke about this, Rick. The other session that we had, we needed our leaders. Where are the leaders? If Kulu's out, I said, Maddison, you've got to step up. Maddison had a chance to step up, and we're looking for that source of creativity. We did not see that. We're used to seeing Maddison in the pockets, meaning in and around that D outside of the area. We want him to get on the ball, shoot. If not shoot, then thread a ball. And we're not seeing that from one of our star players. So you look through the rest of the midfield, Bentancur, he's meant to be the player, one of our senior players. and he's meant to take the game by the scruff of the neck, and he's meant to be talking on the pitch, commanding the players in front of him. That's not happening. But then, if you want to take it further, you look at Danso. Danso's looking like the most liveliest character, and he's the centre back. So check this stat: Danso had more dribbles than Son, completed more dribbles than Son. You can't make it up. He had the same amount of dribbles completed as Johnson. He had more ball carries than anyone else on the pitch, and that's our centre back, Danso. You want to talk about Spence? Spence is getting involved because the midfield are absent. The midfield aren't doing the job. They're not grabbing the game by the scruff of the neck and making themselves known. When you're in midfield, you have to want the ball. You have to show for the ball. You have to come short. Sometimes you have to come long, but you need to demand it in that area because it's the hardest position on the pitch. And that midfield looked non-existent. And that was the biggest reason. When we talk about Ange ball, we're talking about pass and move, players going into spaces, etc. But for some reason, that wasn't happening. And I felt like we struggled against City for a similar reason. When City pulled into a mid-block, we didn't have an idea. When teams drop into a low block, we don't have any ideas. They were able to do long balls over the top, switch it up, sometimes come short. They were able to press us. When we got pressed, we didn't have an idea. When we went to press them, it was lethargic. It was non-existent. It was a terrible press. So everything that you associate with an Ange ball wasn't there. So you start to think, like you guys already alluded to, has Ange lost the players? Has he? You have to ask it. You have to question it because the performance wasn't there.
No. I mean, just on that point, Ash, just to bring Johnny back in. Look, Johnny, I feel like I'm preaching to the converted. I know for a long time you felt with Ange Postecoglou, this isn't really working. And I mean, look, we've come to a point now really in the season. I know many would love to change him right now. And my argument has been that really, I'm not sure whether Daniel Levy wants to hand the reins over to Ryan Mason for a third time or dare if even, the likes of Matty Wells wants to take the role to the end of the season. I've said for, numerous weeks now, I just feel like we need to try, if we can, to battle through until the end of the season, evaluate where we are, and in my opinion, look to make a change in manager. I think I've been very clear in that point. I've also been, I think, fair in my point that I think it's not been all Ange Postecoglou's fault. But when for me, I'm looking at body language of players, off the bench, when then they're sitting there, it doesn't look like a happy camp at the moment. The indications are, and I'm not a lip reader, I know Marlon suggested on the post-match show that we did, Ash, the other night, that Madison's almost suggesting we're continuing to play this way without very little success. And you're looking at players, they look disillusioned. I think the concern that I've had for a number of months is that I've not seen progression on a bigger scale when it comes to players overall in their development. And look, I think many wanted to reserve judgment over that 9-12-week period where we had 14, 15 senior players out. There can't be no argument now. He's got the players back, bar Kulusevski. I mean, Johnny, what's your take on Ange at the moment? I know, look, I'm preaching to converted about where you are in his future. How much longer do you think this is left to run, in your opinion?
Listen, it's really hard. I mean, 34 defeats since he's been there, with a minimum of 12 games to go. How much longer can we let it carry on?
And then this was 18 in all competitions, 18th defeat in all competitions for a club like Tottenham.
Look, we had 16 defeats in 2024. This isn't a blip. Since Chelsea, 2023, this has been a mess. And, I fell foul to it myself. I was one of the fans that said, wait till we get our players back, you'll see. And then when they started to come back in the January, I saw more of the same. I saw the naivety in tactics. And I don't disagree with what Dave was saying about the hierarchy, the management, and, the players' attitude. But I've got to say that if Pochettino had a fraction of the backing that's been handed out to Ange Postecoglou, I don't think we would even be in a situation where we'd have had Jose Mourinho at the club, because I just think Poch, he said he needed new furniture in the house. Yes, the results went bad. We all know it, but he had plenty in the bank to warrant being back properly like this manager has had. we talked about all the deadwood that was left over at the club when he came. He got rid of every single one of them, and we were happy that the deadwood came had gone, and then we got the new players in. You know, we were happy when we got the Vicarios and the Mickey Van der Vens, and you list all the other players, the James Madisons. You can go through the whole list. I don't believe that this group of players is as bad as the manager who's looking after them, who's motivating them. I really, really don't. I mean, how ironic would it be that he would, you know, lose against AZ and, you know, get manager of the month? I listen, he's got a tough game against Bournemouth, which obviously we'll come on to. But wouldn't it be ironic if he was to get the sack, you know, say after Saturday's game, for example, if we were to lose badly against Bournemouth on Sunday, and Ryan Mason and Matty Welsh were to take over and we ended up going on to win the Europa League? I mean, that would be so Spursy. And, you know,
do you see that, Jay? Just to come back on it, just to interact with you on that. Do you see that being a possibility? Do you think if they were to lose heavily to Bournemouth, do you foresee that being a possibility?
I'd like to think there's a possibility. I just think that even a temporary manager, I'm a believer that this squad, with a half decent, more balanced system, not inverting both backs, maybe inverting one back, maybe dropping back a little more, that this club and this squad is capable of far more than what we're achieving now. Listen, I understand the injuries. It's a valid point, the injuries, but
he has got all the players back now, bar that Kulusevski, and he chose to rest Romero and Van der Ven. So I mean, how much more slack can we cut him?
I was fuming that Mikey Moore didn't come on. You know, I've been going on about this. I've been really worried when Mikey Moore deleted his goal, his debut goal
on social media.
Yeah, off the social media. And I discussed it, and I think something's gone on at the club. And they said, no, you're paranoid. Then he deletes his Twitter account. And then, you know, the Ipswich game away when I was there, he did not look himself. And then he's deleted more images. And I said, look, I'm worried if he's going to get a minute. And if any game he should be getting a minute, it's against AZ Alkmaar, who he absolutely tore to pieces in that second half, created so many chances. Unfortunately, none were converted, but he was an absolute menace. He didn't get a minute last night, and I don't understand it. And Dave's absolutely right. The guy, I don't believe that kids that young can just go onto the pitch and find their own way. I don't. They need guidance. And when he's not going well, I believe you look to the manager. And I look to the manager, and again, he's looking at how green the grass is and playing pocket billiards. And for me, this is not what my image of what a top manager is. I mean, people say, "Oh, what do you want him to do? Scream and shout?" No, I want him to interact.
Manage the game. Yeah,
I'm not asking him to be Mikel Arteta, losing it, you know, on the touchline. But when it was really bad last night, you know, why wait to 70 minutes? We could see it was a car crash. And to be honest with you, and as you know, Ricky, I feel like I've been taking part and watching a slow motion train crash for weeks on end. And, you know, I listen, I don't disrespect the people who are Ange and who have sort of disrespected me, because I understand that loyalty and there's nothing wrong with it.
The thing is, Jay, we have all wanted it to work. It's not just a case that we've all, you know, I would have loved, you know, certain aspects of this period that he's been with us to kind of turn around and say, do you know what? I've got this massively, massively wrong. And Ange Postecoglou is taking us to the promised land. And I'm sure, Johnny, you're the same. You know, you love the football club. We want the football club to do well. But it is very hard to see a direction right now where he turns us around. Is that being fair, Johnny?
It's listen, I've lived in hope. Listen, all Spurs fans go to a game with hope. I went to Liverpool away with hope. I mean, the amount of games I've gone with hope and belief that somehow we will do it. But it's 10 minutes into the game and it's all gone. I mean, listen, having seen the second place team in the Dutch league, PSV, be absolutely smashed by Arsenal 7-1. And, you know, final, get very lucky to only lose 2-0 to Inter Milan. I thought, you know what, despite everything that's been going on with the injuries they've had and the time we've had off, the time on the playing ground, he's had everything in his favour. They've had 2 extra games. There can be no excuses. We have to go and beat them. And as Ash said, you know, man for man, I mean, I think 2 of our players is probably the value of their entire squad. And it's there is no excuses. We've listened to all the excuses now. And, you know, I clip back on that famous clip of Ange Postecoglou's interview when he was in the Australian job.
Yep.
And he had a fallout. And here I saw a guy making the same excuses. It's the team. They're youngsters. They're this, they're that. I don't want to hear it anymore. Okay. I do not want to hear it anymore. 4 months. I don't actually blame. Do you know what? I actually don't blame Ange Postecoglou. I blame Daniel Levy. Why? Because when Conte left, we had a 4-month search for a manager befitting Tottenham Hotspur. And, you know, everyone who knows me knows I wanted Arne Slot, but that's ship sailed. I wanted Gallardo. I wanted Amorim. And there were even others on that list. I never for 1 minute thought Ange Postecoglou would be at this club. And although it wasn't what I wanted, I was willing to embrace it and run with it for the good of the club. And you know what? I felt like, you know, I got it wrong in those first 10, 12 games. I don't anymore. And, you know, I put that down to Daniel Levy. And I think Daniel Levy got stuck in this rut where he stuck his neck out on this player, on this manager. And he felt that he had to back him in this transfer market and the other 2 transfer windows. So
did he back him though?
Well, I feel like
we can sit here and say that he's been backed, but I would argue the first transfer window, the first summer under Paratici, you can make an argument there's been backing. But to kick that on, what backing? If Ricky brings up the list of names there, Yuck, Felice, players like that, that's not backing your manager.
No, I'm not talking. Listen, look.
We sold Harry Kane.
Hang on. Right, let's talk about Vicario.
Let's talk about manager.
Yeah, but let's talk about. You're telling me Vicario's not backing. Mickey Van de Vent's not backing.
Yeah, all the first summer transfer window, John.
Right,
what have we done since then?
Solanke's not backing. Right, I can go through them all, Dave. Right. To say
most of them were in the first summer transfer window, though, Johnny. Solanke was the only one that's really backing him last
everyone's going on about, you know, the 2 kids. Yet those 2 kids, Archie Gray and Bergvall, are the 2 bloody shining lights in that team. The 2 players that go, oh my God, what we've done is bought 2 kids. They're the best thing about the season.
Why?
They're the best
because
thing
we didn't
about
sign anyone to make a real impact this summer. That's why. That's why they're the shining lights.
I cannot sit here and say honestly that this is I'm Levy out, right? I'm Enoch out. Everyone knows it, right? But I'm not going to sit here and say that Levy has not spent money and given this guy with Lang.
It's one thing to spend the money, but it's what you spend it on, though, Johnny. You know, it's what you spend it on.
He authorized those signings, Dave. Right?
Come on, Johnny. He's a head coach. He's a head coach, which means that changed under Pochettino. Every person that comes in to try and take over, they're not managers, they're head coaches. That's their job description, which means every other decision above that is taken out of their hands, Johnny. You have a director of football at the club. The reason why clubs operate with a director of football is because your managers is not the ones making the signings. It's
Dave,
obvious.
What did he say? Any player that comes into this club will have to come past me because I will live and die by these signings. That's what he said right at the beginning.
Okay, Johnny, fair. Kim Min-hyuk and Felice. You think he went up to the board and requested them to improve Tottenham's fortunes? This is a guy that sat here and spoke about one. Hang on.
None of those 2 kids, you know darn well, Dave. Come on, you know darn well those kids are for some time in the future. List all the other players that were signed in those 3 windows. Okay. It's not to say we haven't signed players. Come on. You know, I hear what you're saying.
Johnny, I'm not saying we haven't signed players, right? And the thing is, we've spent money. But what did we spend?
305 million we spent. 305 million.
The first year he came in here, the first summer transfer window, after that he finished 5th. What did we really back it up with in the summer? mainly Dominic Solanke. What did we back it up with in this January? Let's be brutally honest about it. We're spending money, but we're spending it wrong. And this is the thing. I get people have a problem with Postecoglou, but we can't just keep saying everything is his fault because we're going to be in this cycle again. Everyone keeps saying, sack the manager, bring in another guy. He's going to get better. I've been around for 4 or 5 years now. I heard the same with Jose Mourinho. I heard the same with Nuno, and I heard the same with Conte.
All I would say, Dave, is to back up Johnny's point. I think to be fair, I think there's a wide feeling, as Johnny has said, that it's not all on Ange Postecoglou, but at the same time,
yeah,
he's authorised those players coming through the door. But I mean, look, I will come back on that. I mean, what I'll ask you, Dave, is in terms of approving those players. You mean in terms of what?
So is he the one going right? This is the player I need to suit my system.
No, can I be honest with you, Dave? But you know this because we've spoken off air and we've spoken on these shows that the reality is that whoever is the Tottenham manager, you will never, ever, ever get every single player that you want. You may never get A, B, C, or D, or who you want. The reality is that when you come to Tottenham, I've said this so many times now, Dave, and I know we probably feel the same on this, that the limitations that are being placed on any manager that comes to Tottenham, in my opinion, makes it absolutely impossible to succeed in this job. And that's where I do agree with you, Dave, that whoever comes in, in the summer, if they do change it, whether it's Iriola, whether it's Marco Silva, whoever it's going to be, that same manager is got to work under the same limitations, and they are going to have players brought in for them that they're going to have to work with, because that's always been the Tottenham model.
But there are limitations that don't work. It's been proven.
Yeah, of course. And that's what I mean. We're stuck in this cycle until somebody, please God, wants to buy the football club and put us out of our misery. We are literally, I've said this so many times, we are stuck in a Mike Ashley hamster wheel now, and we are waiting somebody to buy us to try and get us, Listen, the thing is now for a lot of fans, and listen, the reality is now, I speak to a lot of moderate fans that are so disinterested right now in the club that they don't even want to go anymore. I'm talking about season ticket holders. And, I think, this is why I want to bring on Vicario's comments in a second. But before I do, Dave, you said,
Would it be worse? Would it be worse, though, Ricky? I'm just saying.
Well, I've heard this under previous managers. People said that under Jose, Nuno, and Conte. Let's not pretend they didn't. The reality is it's a narrative that's painted around. Has it got better? No. When people said that under Jose, did it get better under Conte or Nuno? No. Has it got better under Postecoglou? No. So the reality to sit here and say it's going to get better under next guy, he's going to come in and get better.
No, there's no guarantee on that. No, I'm telling you. But the reality, go on, John. You come back on this point. I'm just
saying, look, I don't believe. I'm sorry, Dave. Right? You and I, we stream a lot. Love you, man. But I listen. I do not believe for 1 minute, okay, that a top experienced coach comes across and performs in this manner and puts the club where we are right now with the amount of losses, the way we're playing, the naive tactics. Yes, we could lose games. Yes, we will have our disappointments. Yes, we will be Spursy forevermore. But I don't believe that I don't believe I've seen a worse manager at this club since Terry Neal, who took us down.
The thing is, I'm not making a defense here of Postecoglou. I acknowledge what people are saying. But a lot of the stuff where we're going, he's being backed properly. He hasn't been backed.
No, but then, Dave, you know what? No manager will. The thing is, Dave, no manager will be back, Dave, under this ownership. In terms of when I say backing, I mean in terms of what that manager's going to need. No manager, whoever comes to this football club, because they had 2 win-now managers in Mourinho, Conte, they didn't give them the tools they wanted. So the reality is, whoever comes in next under this ownership, they're not going to get the backing they need. This is why we are stuck in this cycle where, as we've said, nothing's going to really change, whoever they appoint. I'm going to go to Ash, and I'm going to come back to you, Dave, because I need to close the Postecoglou debate. Ash, look, the stats aren't pretty, as I'm sure you're acutely aware. We currently sit, when it comes to the stats at the moment, we've had 11 wins in our last 30 games in all comps. We've now, like I said, in the total of the season, had 18 losses in all comps. Look, 2 of those wins that we had recently were against Elfsborg and non-league Tamworth, and that was in extra time. It just feels like the players have become accustomed to losing, and the body language on the touchline, especially after that game against AZ, is that the belief has completely gone. I think for many out there that are suggesting there's a second leg to turn it around. Look, it's crazy that I might say this. I'm fully expecting Spurs to go through. It's not the fact of losing the first leg. It's the manner in how they've lost, and the fact it's the same repetitive nature of these big games that we simply don't turn up in. And then, no disrespect, you have Heung-Min Son come out after the game and say, we hope it's a wake-up call. How many wake-up calls do we need? Ash, how many wake-up calls do we need? Where are you, Ash, with Ange? Are you at a point with no return with Ange now, Ash?
I think that result. Well, he had me at Liverpool. I'm not gonna lie to you. Liverpool 6-3, diabolical. Other fans were at Brighton when we lost that game. Other fans were Crystal Palace. Other fans were Ipswich. Other fans were Everton. You know, they couldn't find a win. Come to Spurs, they find a win. Then you go to Leicester. Leicester haven't won all season. They find a win at Spurs, and then after that, they lose the following 4 to 5 games where they struggle to score goals. Unfortunately, we're in a business where it's results first. You look at Conte. When Conte came in, we were 9th. We were struggling, and he didn't have the best resources at his disposal, unfortunately. And he managed to get us 4th with Eric Dyer, who nobody likes. Ben Davies, who people were calling tired at the time. Like they said, we should have upgraded him a long time ago. But he managed to get a tune out of Ben Davies. And then we also had Emerson Royale and Romero, of course. Romero was left, and Longley in that summer window came after those guys. And Conte left when we were 4th. But the players that he had, he managed to get the best out of that back line. He was woeful. And I will, concede that he did have Harry Kane, because that's the argument, that we haven't been properly back since we lost Kane. But I'm looking at that pitch, and I said, and people say my standards were low. I said, with this manager, if we drop down to 10th, I'm still going to back it. Do you understand? Not finish 10th. I said, if we get to 10th, I'm still going to back it. But my stomach couldn't hold anything past 10th. We were languishing down in 15th at one point. We're now 13th. If we lose this game against Bournemouth, we'll be 16th. I'm not saying I'm standard FC, but there's only so much you can take where if you keep accepting mediocrity, you'll look behind and your team will be battling it out for relegation, or there will be a mid-table team, because that's how it starts. And I'm not saying fans need to up their standards. I'm not saying that. Support your club and how you want to, but be careful. Be careful, because the thing is as well, I looked at that starting 11, as I said before at the start of the show, and 7 out of the 11, I think, or 6 out of the 11, a good 70% of those starting 11 players, they weren't there when Ange was there. Do you understand? Meaning those new players are new. So the players that were there before, and we're talking about players letting us down, we're looking at, okay, Spence. Spence was a player that was there before he came. I thought Spence played well. So I'm not really going to say, Ange, you've been letting Ange down, you're part of the problem, because no, I can't even give Ange credit for Spence. He wasn't a part of it. Son was there before him. Yeah, Son was there before him, because we're saying, it's the players. 50% of the players are letting us down. It's not Ange's fault. It's the players that are letting them down. But I look at Son. He was there before Ange, but he's meant to be the captain. Ange made him captain. Ange, that's on Ange. He made him captain.
Fans wanted him as captain. When we were selling Harry Kane, fans wanted him as captain. They also have to take responsibility.
And he vetoed that. He don't know. For me, look, this is just my opinion. Because for me, he could have easily said to Son, look, because for me, he's just a nice guy. You're picking up, all right then, Ange. What your Ange is doing then, he's picking it on popularity. Oh, the fans wanted him, so I'm going to make him captain. That's not your job as a manager. No, your job as a manager is not to pick the player that's Mr. Nice Guy because all the fans wanted it, or because Levy wants money. Do you know what I'm saying? That for me is sackable in itself. That you're appeasing. You should not be appeasing, because now your job's on the line. So we can't come with that. And then the other player, Benton Core, he's been missing. Do you understand? And what can I say? This is Ange picking the player. We have to say, look, the other player that was performing well was Bergvall. That was a new player. So I don't really know to say out of the 7 players that were playing under Ange, those were Ange's players. Do you understand? Who are we really pointing the finger at that's not really doing well? So
just to qualify on this point, Ash, with regards to the manager, in your opinion, how long has he got left? Is there a way you can get to the end of the season at the moment? In your opinion, can he get to the end of the season?
I think that game was the acid test, because the point was he's not performing well because he didn't have his players. That was the whole point. And the fact that, because you can say, Romero, and you can say, actually, Van der Ven wasn't playing. That's why, we're not playing so well. But it was the attacking. It was the
the front
possession.
three. The front.
It was the lack of
Yeah.
attacking patterns of play. It was to understand. It would be different if we were like, you see, like how PSG lost to Liverpool, right? I know that's an extreme example. Maybe I can use that.
Yeah. No, but we understand where you're coming from. They dominated the game.
The point I'm making is, if we lost 1-0 and we tested their keeper, guys, one shot
in the 87th minute it was a miscue.
Huh?
You know what?
And we still want to back this. And wait, Ricky, just to finish it off, we're meant to be an attacking team. We're meant to be possession, front-footed team. And this season, I can't even say like, we're playing possession-based. Like, it's hot. And you know what's mad? It's hot, cold, inconsistent. Hot, cold. You can't. That's the bottom line for me. It's different if you could go on a run of 4 games, 5 games, and you can see a progression. But I'll be honest with you. I can see us going on a run of 2 to 3 games, then losing. Or 1 game, then draw. 1 game, then loss. And that's the problem. I think that's more the issue.
I think the problem is now, though, we've come to a point that's come over to you, and I want you to qualify where you are, Ange Postecoglou, because I know, again, there was that passionate debate that you and Johnny had. I know you were making a point, Dave, that really whoever comes here is not going to really be back, which I know Johnny agrees with as well. But I think the feeling is really that, I mean, we've not really seen Ange Ball, if you want to. Oh God bless! I'm sick of it. I'm sick of hearing this.
Did we see Conte or Jose Ball though? Did we really see their systems in full effect at Tottenham?
No, again, at times with Conte, we did, obviously, when he got us into the top 4. But with all due respect, when I look at Ange, the last time I really saw any glimpse of what his football was, when he says we need to play our football, was probably that Man United game, which we won 4-3, where Forster chucked 2 in, and we were on the edge of our seats. I mean, since then, I've not seen anything really to suggest that we're trying to play the way he wants us to play. And it kind of goes back to that point now, really, that what are Tottenham in terms of their identity? Yes, we've qualified and said here, that 9-12 week period where he lost a lot of players, senior players, got to give him time, bring the players back. He's had 8 days. That team that we played has played twice during that period. They've gone to extra time. They've got the penalties. I mean, the body language for me doesn't look good on the touchline. Where are we, Dave, in your mind now, going into what is a big next 4 or 5 days for the football club, where it just feels, I don't know if you agree with me, Dave, it just feels like a case of, when, not if anymore. We're kind of at a point of inevitability when it comes to Ange now.
No, look, like I said, I've been questioning Ange for a while, but I think last night is where he, I truly got off the platform, so to speak. It's just so many things, over the last while. Even when he does have options off the bench, he hasn't used them correctly. He keeps taking, like, when you're looking for a goal, as bad as Son and Maddison were yesterday, what world are we living in where Johnson is favoured on the pitch to stay on?
Johnny's right about Mikey Moore. How does Mikey Moore not get a minute when he's absolutely torn to shreds AZ in that game? He can't get a minute at the moment.
Well, no, that's another thing I was saying in my game yesterday. I said, as soon as the lineup came out, I said, look, if he doesn't get a game off the bench, then Andrew's missing a trick here, because he absolutely tore the life out of them fullbacks when he came up against them in the home game. So he doesn't help himself to that regard. And look, like I said, in terms of stuff like that, fine, be my guest, go and question the manager. And I think, for me, once we're out of the Europa League, I think he'll be sacked, and Ryan Mason or someone will be put in temporary charge to the end of the season.
But Dave, I stupidly think we're going to go through next week. Do you not think we're going to go through?
I'll be honest, I can't sit here with confidence and say yes, to be honest. I can't. Because we did only score 1 against them when we played them earlier on in the season.
Yeah, but they're not great. The thing is, and I've got a cheek in saying this, Dave, because I know the way we're playing right now. They're not a great side, AZ. I just think with the fans behind us at home, I refuse to believe we'll allow us to go out that competition.
The mentality, Ricky. It's the
you're
mentality.
Right.
When it matters, FA Cup, League Cup, what happened? Smaller games that don't matter, it doesn't, like, what we can play. When it's the pressure, when the pressure's off, the boys turn up. Yeah. But when the pressure's on and we really need to get that over the line, how many times have we said that? Not even just.
No, you're right. Look, maybe I'm deluded. Maybe I'm deluded, Ash. Look, maybe I'm deluded.
No, because I believe as well. I predicted the 2-1 with you. I said 2-1. I said Spurs are going to win. So you're not deluded.
If we can lose to Patros to Ferreira, if we can lose to Vitesse Arnhem, if we can lose to NS Moore, if we can, lose to manager in prison, despite holding on to it. Yeah, exactly.
Stop swearing, Dave. Stop swearing.
We're capable of losing to absolutely anybody on our day. But look, the big reason why I think we're going to struggle to overturn it, and even if we do, I'm not sure we're going to progress much more beyond the quarterfinals anymore, is because That attack is stale. It's nowhere near good enough. I don't have faith in that forward line, and I haven't done, for quite some time since I've seen the players that we've replaced Harry Kane with. I haven't really had too much faith. None of them have struck me and said they're going to step up and really make an impact here. And to a large degree, I've been proven right. It's very stale in that forward line. It's very boring to watch. But the reality is, I'm not sitting here what I'm trying to get across is I'm not sitting here defending the manager. When anyone that is pointing the finger at him, where has that got you the last 4 times you've done it? It hasn't. And that's my whole point. If we really want change at this football club, we need to figure out what really is a manager's problem and where things went wrong, so that when the next guy comes in, we can improve for these things to be fixed. To keep blaming the finger and blame everything else on the manager, it's not right. And we're going to keep being in this cycle. And that's my whole point.
I do agree, Dave. But I just think, I think you've come to that point as well, though, Dave, to let you come back on this and let you answer it also to clarify. I think we've come to the point of Ange that from a competency perspective, from the fact that when you're looking at the camp as the leader, and are these players running through a brick wall for him in the big games? And this I think is why fans are massively concerned that the manager is meant to be able to galvanise, motivate the squad when it comes to the big games of the season. Liverpool away in the Carabao Cup, we produce that exit that we do 4-0. We go to Aston Villa, we were absolutely horrendous, let's be honest about it. We hung in there second half if you want me to try and find a bit of balance. Last night, it's been, after everything we've had in the previous cup exits, it's the biggest game of the season. With no disrespect, we're playing an AZ side, as Johnny said, that's missing 3 of their, you'd argue, starter players. They've had an 8-day rest period. They've had, in that time, AZ have played twice. We've got pretty much most of the squad back, bar Kulusevski. I'm sure you can agree, Dave, as well. You can also look at the fact that with a manager out, I still think if we had a manager that was competent, I think we could get far in this competition. But I think where we are right now, I can't see us going beyond, the latter stages of the competition if we are to remain with Ange Postecoglou. But I just don't think the club have got any real replacement in mind, and they are trying their best, in my opinion, just my opinion, Dave. I think they're trying their best to carry this through until the end of the season if they can, and just get there. That's my opinion.
Look, I hear what you're saying about the motivation, and another manager of proven pedigree would do better. Jose Mourinho got knocked out against Zagreb with applying Cayman and Son. So again, is that inherent at Tottenham Hotspur?
Oh, it's a mentality problem, 100%.
Motivation. You talk about motivation in big games. We referenced the Liverpool game. Jose Conte got slapped up in a doubleheader against Chelsea in the cup semi-final as well. So he has, and Postecoglou hasn't been the only one that has failed to motivate these players for big games, and that's why I question again: is it something that's inherent at the football club?
That is a problem.
Keep stacking managers. If you keep sacking managers, they're never going to be allowed to make authorian changes or become a real authority in the dressing room.
Do you also agree, though, D, on this point? But do you also agree, D, that you just can't keep a manager just because we've sacked 15, 20 managers? It comes to a point where the managers also, this one, is maybe just not a very good manager for what we need him to be. Is that fair?
Look, I agree. You can't just keep prolonging. I've said this all along. You can't just keep prolonging because you don't want to sack a manager. At the end of the day, I think every Spurs fan is, we've been here before 4 or 5 times since Pochettino. We're experienced in these situations, unfortunately. We know it's coming to an end. It's just not if, when. But the reality is, like I keep saying, stuff like that, motivating players for big games. Again, we can pin it on Postecoglou, but it's not just being Postecoglou. And this is what I keep trying to get across to people. Anything that people comes to with me and says about Postecoglou, I can pull up 4 or 5 examples on the previous regimes
where
some
situation.
of the same stuff is still happening. And that's
not 18 losses, Dave. Not 18 losses.
Yeah, but Johnny, again, this is the first manager without Harry Kane. All them other managers had Harry Kane who put points on the board.
How far can you go back? You're making excuses for the manager.
I'm not making excuses, Johnny. It's reality. When we sold Harry Kane, we bought relegation fodder to come in and replace Harry Kane. Postecoglou is the only manager to deal the post-Harry Kane era. There's going to be a massive drop-off when you don't have the world's best striker scoring your goals, putting points and draws on the board. The season before that, underneath Antonio Conte, before we sold him, he put 22 points on the board with winners and equalisers. He is a player of class that is a game decider. We don't have that anymore at Tottenham, and until we recognise that, we're never going to move forward.
Can I just say that where I do agree, though, across the board here is that what I agree with you, Dave, is that whoever comes in is going to inherently have the same problems as all the previous managers gone before him. But at the same time, I do feel like I've come to a point now where for a lot of people out there. No, you're right, but I think we've come to a point now when you look at the squad they've got to work with. I'm just at a point that I refuse to believe in my mind that a better, competent manager can't get more out of the squad available
Ricky,
to him.
It's about balance as well, because it's not
Of
like
course,
I'm
of
not
course.
scoring goals at the same time in the league. I'm talking about not in the cups, but in the league, we've actually got a plus goal advantage.
I know.
If you check there, we've got like
It's
plus
mental.
14.
Have you done deeper
So I
digging
know-
into them, though?
so-
Ash? Have you done deeper digging into that? If you
Say
go
that
back
again?
and look at the games, when we win really big. We
Yes.
put 3-4 by teams. But the difference, the
yes,
problem is
but-
between them wins is
go
a
on.
long time. And between them, we don't score a lot of goals.
And I
So
agree
again,
with that
we
point.
can
So I
paint
made that
these
same
numbers to
point.
be fluffy, but give the
I
full
hear
context about it.
The
But can I
context
just
for
say-
me, and no, wait. The context I was going to say is defensive, and that's what I meant by balance, because there's certain games where we're losing by a goal. Yes, we're conceding a lot of shots, but for me, defensively, that's the issue. To understand, you can be attacking. There's nothing wrong with being attacking, but it's out of possession. How are we set up? Have the likes of Udogie improved, or has he gotten worse? Has Sarr improved defensively?
None of
Do you know what I'm
them.
saying? Have we improved those? And that's what you want from your coaches. That's what you want from your coaches. You want them to get the extra inch out of these players.
Yeah,
Remember, I mentioned.
I think that's the
Davies
question
and the
mark.
Dias
Ash.
that
This
no
is-
one
this is
was
the
rating.
question mark.
And
This is the question
is he
mark. The
getting
coaching staff
the
in general
extra
as well.
5% or
Yeah.
the 10%
Yeah.
of the coaching staff? Yeah, of course. But he's
Ash,
the one
man,
that said, no,
regression.
wherever I go,
Yeah.
yeah, wherever I go, I don't need my coaching staff. I'll take whatever's gone. And to be fair to Dave, he's right. That's on the board, because the board are cutting corners. Do you understand? Because those managers that we were linked with, the Slot,
Yeah.
the Nagelsmann, the every manager else we were linked with, the reason why they never came is because they didn't want to pay for the coaching staff. So yeah, I think all of us. Even Nuno.
Yeah.
So we all have points. So it is a culture thing. It's inherited.
I just feel
Whoever
he's
comes
the
in-
guy. I just feel he's the guy before the guy. I always said it, I said it with Sean and I were talking, and we thought that Ange was the guy before the guy.
What you got to remember though, Jay, on that point, is you got to remember that it's the same ball that have then got to appoint the next guy. How much confidence do you have on that?
I blame the board. Listen, I don't blame Ange Postecoglou, because I don't think Ange, with the greatest respect to Ange, this was a job too far for him. Right, that's my belief. Right,
I just think, Johnny, I'll let you come back on this. I think the job is not what it's turned out to be, because it's now become a bit of a youth project, hasn't it? It's become a case of now you're being given a lot of young players. There's not a huge amount of experience there, so you're having to really kind of coach, adapt the players to a system that I just don't think that they're beneficial to in this system. I don't know if you agree, John. I just think the system they're being asked to play is not getting the best out of the players. And that is why when you look at our results over a long stretch period, injuries, no injuries, or whatever you want to judge, the results have not been good enough. And to have 18 defeats at this stage is not good enough.
I'm just going to say, I don't believe that this system, like Ash says, suits anyone. I see regression. I don't see progression. I can't sit here and list a whole load of players that this coach has improved, and he's had Dom Solanke. Listen, we're playing a team tomorrow, which obviously we're going to come on to. We're going to come on to Iriola.
We've got to get there. We have got to get there.
Who sold his best?
This is meant to be a quick debate of the show. We're still at an hour in.
For £65 million.
Yeah.
And the club are better than they were last season without him.
Yeah, you can't argue that.
Because this is a coach who learns to adapt. This is a coach that's had 11 injuries, right? Yes, he hasn't got Europe. I've heard all the arguments, but still he adapts. And he takes the situations and he changes in game. And, I like what he's doing, and I like what he's been doing consistently on a consistent level. And I look at our coach. I have this system. This is the system I'm going to use. I will not. Yes, he's made some tweaks over the time. Yes, he has. But it's eat, sleep, repeat. And
the problem is as well, Jay, I'll let you finish on this point. We're not even playing the football that he wants us to play anymore, are we, Jay? We're not playing handball. Yeah.
Because he's retreated. He's like a turtle and he's wound his neck inside his shell now. This arrogant. Listen, look, who didn't love the Ange Postecoglou that turned up at Spurs?
Of course, yeah, it was refreshing.
Games. Yeah. Everyone loved Ange. He came in, he was full of the joys of Springs, the banter, all the joking around with all the, all the press.
Yeah, they all turn up like that.
Yeah, and now he's like the guy's on antidepressants. It is depressing watching him. It's depressing.
Try being a fan.
Well, exactly. You know, and we come away. I go to most of the away games. I go to all the home games. And like sometimes you come back and you're so frustrated, and people have a go at you because I'm passionate. I'm no more passionate than others that go, but sometimes I just can't listen to any more excuses. And I think maybe that's the point. I've got to now.
Yeah, listen, we have got to move on. We are very, very conscious of time. I think we have summed up kind of where everybody seems to be at with regards to Ange Postecoglou. I think the general consensus is that
yeah.
We've got to move on because that could spark something else. Look, it's this weekend as well for those going into the Bournemouth game. There's been a situation which has seemed to occur over the course of the last 24, 48 hours where it kind of happened straight after full time. And it's kind of then been really throughout, really Friday into Saturday that there's been suggestions of a real miscalculation by Guglielmo Vicario that at full time approached the Tottenham fans. And look, I think just to give Vicario his dues, he's very passionate, he's very hyped up, but there was almost a miscalculated attempt after the final whistle to try and get the fans behind the team as the Italian repeatedly kind of raised his arms, pumped his arms up in a way to kind of, and I'll put it so maybe rouse them, try and galvanise the fans. But it really took a moment for Vicario to kind of realise that the away fans weren't really receptive to the message he was trying to suggest. There was almost a feeling from Vicario that he needed to try and get the fans back on side. And I think it's fair to say it wasn't really, calculated correctly from Vicario, who, to be fair, during that game, it wasn't for Vicario. Spurs would have lost the game by quite easily 3-4-0. He made a number of really important saves. The fans, they shouted disappointment back at Vicario and the players. There was one point where Maddison was also trying to raise the spirits, and the Italian tried again before turning and marching away with a face really of real, frustration, to be fair. And you know what? I think it's fair, as I said, Vicario will be one of the very few players that comes out of that game with any kind of credit, because if it wasn't for him, it could have been much worse. But in my opinion, it was a real miscalculated move. And I think he was surprised by the supporters that hit back with such anger. And I'm talking about the away fans at full time. And Vicario said, look, I can understand the disappointment for the night because we didn't play our football. So I can understand the fans' frustration, but we still have a lot to play for, especially in the second leg. It's just a way of trying to stay together because we have the opportunity to go through to the next round. The fans can be critical. They have to be. They must be disappointed for the game we have played, but we still have another game to play against AZ on our patch. So it's a moment to stick together because we can go through to the next round. We need the fans every game, home and away. We know they are very important for us. And this is now a big moment of the season where we hope we can play with them and they can be the difference for us. But I can understand the disappointment. He was baffled by the inconsistency of the team, like us fans have been in general, and admits that the performance that we saw was nowhere near the level that we should have played during the game. I think, look, we've come to that point where, we've seen this time and time again, these similar performances, and that's why Vicario maybe got the backlash that he did at full time. I mean, Dave, did he just completely miscalculate this situation? We're going to need to be a very quick debate on this. We'll quickly go around because we've got to look ahead to Bournemouth, but was it just a poor misjudgment from Vicario, who had a very, very good game on the night in terms of his saves that kept us in the game?
Yeah, Vicario is probably one of the only players that can actually come off the pitch with his head held high. He saved us the embarrassment of Troy Parrott, scoring against us and that. But he's just completely misread the room, hasn't he? Look, the reality is, I get what he's trying to do, but fans still travel to away games despite 18 losses this season. Fans are still going to home games despite 18 losses this season. We don't need a reminder to stick together and get behind the team and turn up and sing and this, that. Every fan has done it. Even fans that can't get to games, they still sit in front of their TV every single game to watch them. Fans are doing their job. Shut up. I don't want to hear any more players come out anymore. I'm sick of all these speeches and everything else. Just do your job, win games of football, and the adulation will come. The praise will come. It's not just Vicario, but for the last couple of years, there seems to be an open disrespect to the fans to a large degree. Postecoglou had a pop-up fans and couldn't understand fans, reasoning around the Man City National game last season. Maddison was out at the darts when we're losing games and stuff like that, having a pop-up fans calling them Wally. Johnson's been going around shushing fans every time he scores because they have criticism. And now Vicario storms down the tunnel. I'm sorry, but us fans are not the problem. We're the ones that support this club. We're the ones that go through the pain. We're there with you week in, week out. But you guys are the ones on the pitch that can do something about it. So go and do it. Stop talking about the fans. All it is just one big distraction away from their performance. Do your job.
Yeah, no, listen, I understand that. I mean, Ash bringing you into this, Ange did launch a heavy, passionate defence of Vicario in his pre-match press conference ahead of Bournemouth and said, look, Vicky's very, very passionate about this football club and he's very passionate about what we're trying to do here. He wants to win and he wants everybody on board with that. If people think this is one bad or if people think there is one bad or vindictive bone in Vicario's makeup, they don't know the man that I do. The guy is one of the most purest human beings you have ever come across, mate. So whatever he does, whatever he thinks is it's best for the team and it's for the football club because he really, really cares. Ash, what was your take on that confrontation at full time? Slightly awkward. Did he just get it wrong in the moment, do you think?
Yeah, it's a case of pick your battles wisely. And obviously his immaturity on that particular situation showed a little bit where maybe where he's from culturally that's what they want to see there from their players, but over here in the UK especially for Spurs fans, after that type of performance as well, not everyone's going to be able to like say, you know what, I hear what Vic's saying. Do you understand? Especially at that time as well, off the back of a loss where a lot of fans had an expectation that we will be able to get the job done, at least a draw away. So, I think it was just, as you guys have said already, timing, not reading the room, and literally, you just got it wrong on the day. That's all I can say about it. But I think he would have learned from that. And I think he spoke to us like he was like we're one of the team players, because that's what you say to your teammates. You know what I mean? You kind of rally up the teammates like get your head up and come on, like get behind us, come on. Like no, we're not your teammates, bro. We're fans, do you understand? And so we're gonna be slightly more emotional, and not everyone operates the same. You can say that to some people, and they'd be like, tough love works. Do you know what I'm saying?
I would rather redirect it to the players. I'd rather redirect that to the players that didn't put the performance in. There was, like we said, there was no blame on Vicario for his performance. Well, it's a hope
we did, but obviously we don't. We're not privy to that.
No,
what happens
we're not.
In the dressing room.
No,
all we can do is comment and speculate after the game.
Yeah. He has since taken to Instagram, Johnny, coming over to you, and he said, look, as a team, we take full responsibility for our terrible performance on the pitch. We'll work even harder to understand as a mature group what went wrong. Still with the opportunity starting from Sunday to redeem ourselves and prepare in the best way possible for the second battle next Thursday. Regarding what happened at the final whistle in front of the away section, I want to clarify my intention to keep everybody as united as possible, even in the disappointment we have caused our people. If I've offended anyone, I apologise to those who felt affected. Post-match emotions can be misunderstood, but I assure you that my commitment to this team and you, our fans, grow stronger day after day. Coys, that if there's one man that should be the captain of this football club, it is Vicario. He has got the right passion, the right mentality. I just think in that moment, there was a little bit of a misjudgment there. What's your take on it, Johnny, for you?
Yeah, no, listen, look, I mean, the passionate defence of Vicario. I would love to see some of that passionate coaching on the side of the pitch. I like passion, right? I like my players to play with passion. Yes, you can get over exuberant, but sometimes, I'm a massive fan of Kuti. There's a lot of people here who can't stand him, think he goes well over the top. But personally, I'd rather have a team of nasty individuals, right, who go into the tackle like that, who want to win. And for me, he's a captain all day long. Sonny, club ambassador, lovely guy. Give him a hug, give him a kiss. I don't want to see my captain crying. Okay, maybe I'm too much of a male. I don't know.
Alpha male, old
male. But look for me, Vicario, that passion I love. He deserves to be forgotten because he's made a mistake. He's had the decency to come out and apologise straight away. He hasn't hidden. Big up to him. Move on.
Yeah, I do agree. Look, I think like you said there's a lot more worrying things going on with Tottenham right now than Vicario going over to the away. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, because our away fans, in my opinion, are the best fans in the country for what they've had to go through. I just think in that moment there was a slight misjudgment, but we can't vilify him for it because he's one of the very few players that we've got here that is really beholden of a Tottenham shirt. If we start, lambasting him, what are we left with? With all due respect, we could have been out of the game and out of sight. We do need to bring in where we are in regards to Bournemouth and what that does look like. Obviously, ahead of going into the game, there was that news, as many saw after the game, that Dominic Solanke could be seen being taken off the pitch by one of Spurs' coaching staff. And the situation that we've got right now, bear me 1 second, guys. The situation we've got right. Okay, 1 sec, darling. I'm going to hand. My kids are in here. I've been absolutely lambasted. I don't know if you heard that. I'm going to hand over to Johnny for a second to discuss where we are with Solanke. Because, like I say, with regards to Solanke at the moment, it's touch and go. Key question to ask you, Johnny. Ahead of course, Thursday in the Europa League with Solanke, do you give him a rest until then, in your opinion?
I think you need to give him a rest. I think, look, the thing is, Bournemouth game, I don't know what you guys think, but I love watching Bournemouth. They seem to be better, as I mentioned before. They seem to be better, with 65 million that they've got from Solanke. They brought in Evan Nielsen, who, although he's been injured, they seem to be playing better. I mean, Kluivert, Semenya, Kirkes. I think he needs to be rested. I wouldn't be playing him. Maybe if his back isn't so bad, Dave and Ash, I think maybe bring him on for 15, 20 minutes. I just do not want to see him leading the line. But begs the question, is there another player? Right, this was my worry when Kulusevski's went out. Tel cannot hold the ball up. Sonny cannot hold the ball up. We've got no Richarlison. Who would you play up front to actually hold the ball up? Because I would have maybe tried Kulu as a false nine had he still been there, because he's the only one that's capable of holding the ball up and push Tel out wide somehow. Yeah. But we don't have that luxury now.
No. I think this is going on the forwards there, like we touched upon. I mean, we're in a difficult situation come Thursday. Look, just to give you a brief on what Ange just said going into the game against Bournemouth and what it looks like for him to try and galvanise the players. He said, look, I've got disappointed players at the moment. We're all disappointed, but I want the focus now to move on to the Bournemouth game. He said, look, if you take away when we beat Ipswich 4-1 a couple of weeks ago in that second half against Man City, we were a really, really good against a very good team. But when you're inconsistent like we are, people pick their moments. And invariably, when you look at your lowest points as a reference point, this is where that inconsistency is a real, real big problem for us. And we do need to rectify it. He did again emphasise the point that he doesn't think the performances that we're seeing are a lack of effort or commitment. But, it's really hard to argue that when you're seeing what we're seeing right now. He said with regards to Dom that he's got a knee in the backside, so it's a bit of a sore one. So hopefully he'll be back pretty quickly. He wanted to qualify that on Ben Davies. He's not really sure where we are with regards to Ben Davies going into the weekend. He said at the moment, we'll see in the next 24, 48 hours whether Ben can be considered for the game. So Ben Davies still a doubt going into this one. And Ange again was really being asked those questions around the fact of now trying to manage the squad over this next 4 or 5 day period, but was very, very clear that for the Bournemouth game, it's a really important game for the football club. And he was asked about the potential return of Mickey van der Ven and Christian Romero as a duo. And he said, when I saw the pitch the night before, I made my mind up that I wasn't going to risk them. It wasn't a great pitch. It wasn't steady underfoot. And it wasn't the sort of game that I wanted to expose them to. I mean, look, we could go over and over this with regards to, Ange's thoughts on the pitch. I just think when you start bringing in about the pitch not being great, and Davy's shaking his head there, I think, you know what, you start entering that debate about pitches and balls and,
saying the grass is greener on the other side?
Oh, well, we haven't got a choice. We've got to stay here. But the fact of the matter is, I think when you start entering that territory around the blaming of the pitch or, balls, I think you then start losing a lot of fans that were with you, that have still been with you in the first place. So I think that's difficult. But it does feel like with Mickey van der Ven, Christian Romero, you feel like, Dave, do you feel like he's going to have to give them minutes ahead of AZ? Do you feel like they're going to have to play part of Bournemouth if they're going to play against AZ, Dave?
Well, first of all, I don't buy the excuse of the pitch. I mean, I'm sorry, but most of these players would have played on a lot worse pitches growing up.
Why did AZ play so well putting the ball about the way they were doing it?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It didn't affect AZ. They looked like Barcelona last night, prime Barcelona, right? You know, popping it around. So it didn't affect them. It's only us that has that excuse. But to be honest, I think it's a Dutch problem. We went out to Vitesse Arnhem. I remember Ben Davies blamed the crowd that night, and amongst other things. So I think they must be smoking out there or something rather than actually, you know, preparing for football games with the excuses we're coming out of. But with Mickey van der Ven and Romero, do you know what? The fact that they didn't play Thursday night makes me think that we are going to see both of them back in there from the off. But also there's a part of me when he brought them straight back in from the off against Chelsea and they both went injured again. A lot of fans had a huge problem with it. So it's really hard to know what to expect, what Postecoglou is going to do. My guess would be, I would think the fact that Danzo has been experimenting at left-sided centre-back the last few games, I think you'll see him there with Romero coming in at right-sided centre-back with Van der Ven potentially coming off the bench at some point.
Yeah, he's got a decision to make there. And, you know, again, he's emphasised this point that we are determined to go down this road and I believe it is the way that will bring success to this football club, and every change on the way that tries to shift you away from that, that's when you have to show your resolve and determination to stay the course. I wish the bloody players were going to be showing it. I mean,
what road? Does he mean the cul-de-sac? I'm not sure which road he's talking about.
It's not the yellow brick road, is it? I tell you, it's difficult. I mean, like I say, he mentions that point about the consistency, how we go from having those kind of really high performances than having the worst. I mean, Dave said it earlier. You know, you look at our wins that we've had. You know, you have those kind of massive wins, then we lose a game by the odd goal, and that's why you've got the goal difference you've got. That's why I think a lot of fans, it's hard to correlate it, because when Tottenham have been good, they've been so good. But when they've been bad, it's so bad. I mean, that ceiling between kind of, you know, floor level to height, you can't really correlate it. Look, it is also a game, Ash, that many would argue it's potentially an audition for Iriola. That's been, for many fans, high on their wish list going into the summer. Can't get away from the fact as well that Iriola has had his injury problems as well this season. And there will be that concern when you've looked at Spurs over the course of these last two seasons and the injuries that we've had, that Iriola is a manager who likes to also play quite a high tempo, quite an aggressive brand of football that has seen in his own squad a number of injuries. Do you see it, Ash, as a potential audition for the job, this one, Iriola?
Well, you just have to go back on what you just said, because if you look how we've lost Solanke, he also lost Solanke. But on top of that, he lost his star striker he brought in for Solanke from Porto, Evan Nilsson. And when he lost Evan Nilsson, he was able to adapt his team to beat a Newcastle team 4-1. Or was it 5-1? I forget. Point being, he didn't need a player to hold up the player. Because there's different systems doesn't mean that you always have to have a striker to hold up the play. For example, some teams play 4-2-4, where you've got 4 forwards, if that makes sense. Do you understand? So he used Altera, who's not even a striker. He's actually a forward. He's a wide forward player, and he used him as the number 9. And so he was able to circumvent that problem that he was missing a striker, and he was able to get around those teams. He looked at his bench against Newcastle. He didn't have a single senior player on that bench. You look at players like Kirkes, who he brought in, he wasn't defending well when he first came in. What did he do? He improved him. Now, all of a sudden, he's linked to Liverpool, Real Madrid. Real Madrid won...
Huijsen as well. You got to make Huijsen as well. Another one, Huijsen.
Real Madrid won their centre-back, Huijsen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And at the start of the season, Huijsen wasn't even in the starting lineup. It was Sensi. Do you understand? Yep. And then he was out for a good 6 weeks. Guess what? They were missing their fullbacks. They had to put Lewis Cook in there, who's a midfielder. So they've had midfielders playing in the fullback position. And he's able to put square pegs and turn them into diamonds. Yep. So this whole injury excuses doesn't really wash with me, because he's dealt with injuries, but he's made his team perform regardless. And as I said before at the start of the show, he's getting players that are playing 5% into Altera, that forward player I was talking about, who's not a number 9, he's not a number striker. He's got him scoring hat tricks. Why? Because they understand the system. He understands the nuances. He can get an extra, and that's what we're looking for. And that's why, even if he doesn't win, actually, on Sunday, and he Spurs managed to beat them, I still think he's done enough to show that actually, without certain players, he's able to tweak, able to get the best out, and doesn't say, "Oh, it's my injuries." He didn't come out. You didn't hear Areola saying, "Oh, my injuries," when I get my team back, when I get Evan Nilsson back. Do you know what I mean? So regardless of how many games they've played to versus how many games we played, could he do it with 60 games? It doesn't matter, because he had 11 players out and still didn't make the excuse. He just got on with it. And he made those adaptations where he needed to without compromising his philosophy. Because I feel like, and I said at the start of the show, Ange Postecoglou, it doesn't feel like he's playing that high, front-footed, aggressive, possession-based type of football. I don't feel like, I feel like he's actually dimmed down his philosophy a bit. Because when I looked at AZ, we weren't pressing the same way, I don't know. It doesn't feel the same kind of, like, I feel like even when he went to a back three and he tried the back three thing. I was like, oh, let me try back three. And then he got no, like, is that
against Everton? Of all teams.
So
I mean,
so that's not, I feel like he's somewhat compromised on what he says. This is who we are, mate.
I think the thing is he keeps saying we want to play our football. We haven't seen his football for a very, very long time.
This is my point. So I'm not sure if he's actually compromising his actual style. I think and to his own detriment. To understand, and so as I said at the start, like, there's one thing being 8th, 9th, 10th, but to come all the way down to 13th.
Yeah.
And then we move from 13th up to 13th. Like, you can't make this up. There's a reason why there's so many people, and then knocked out all the cups. And then on top of the knocking out all the cups, apart from Europa, you have that display like that. It's just a mishmash. Because I think even some fans are saying, even if he wins Europa, which is wild, even if he wins Europa, they're still not on it. Because the league form has been so
the league, you can't defend the league form.
Carry on like this. He gives me, I mean, I got to tell you, I'm not just saying it because, he's Spanish, South American, whatever, but Iraola is the only manager out there that gives me Poch vibes. The way
that's why a lot of people like him.
Yeah, because he brought players on. I love what he's done with Semenyo, with Justin Kluivert, who's just getting better and better and better.
Johnny, just on that, Kluivert was at Roma. People were saying Kluivert's a rubbish player.
Rubbish.
Now look how he improved him. Then you look at
more of a midfielder, right? Now
look, you look at players like their midfield, right? Christie. People would say Christie wouldn't get into Spurs' team. How dare you, Christie? You know what I'm saying? But Christie's performing like we've got Tyler Adams that came from Fulham. Tyler Adams transformed Spurs' team. Huh? But it's the same with like players that people are calling out Basuma, Bentancur. When Basuma was at Brighton, and it was who was it? The manager, Harry Potter, was the manager. He was getting the best out of Basuma in that system in the double pivot. To understand, so sometimes it is the coach that can get that extra.
Christie. Yeah, but Christie, he was an attacking midfielder, and he turned him into a box-to-box midfielder.
It's a clear indication of someone that is developing his players in a way he wants them to play, and he's getting the very, very best out of the squad. Does it mean you want to cut the top? That's another question. That Bournemouth will arrive on Sunday with their own 8-day break for them. Again, we know they're going to play a high-intensity brand of football. For Bournemouth, really, they are a side that are really in contention for European football. You could argue that for them, there's a lot more fight for them in this game than it is for Tottenham, who, to be honest with you, I think we can come to a point where Tottenham won't get relegated now. And the gap between them and obviously the European places makes it virtually impossible to reach them. So the best Tottenham can hope for is to try and narrow that gap between where they are to maybe mid-table. But when you look at, the narrow beating of Man City, that means Tottenham now just won one of their last 9 Premier League contests in front of their own fans, losing 6 of them. A defeat on Sunday would see them lose 8 Premier League matches at home for the first time in a 38-game season. So that is the worry. For Bournemouth going into the game, in terms of where they are at the moment with regards to injuries, they are hoping to welcome back soon Ilya Zabani. I think he serves actually the final game of his suspension, so I think he will miss this one. Alongside that, they've got Enes Unal, Marcus Senesi, Julian Joao, Adam Smith, out, but has refused to rule out Ryan Christie in his pre-game press conference. Guys, let's get some predictions for this one. Not going to be an easy game. Ange Postecoglou has said ahead of it, they're a really, really good side. They were good last year too. And Donny has a really distinct way of playing. They're really aggressive with their football, both with and without the ball. They've got some very, very good players who are developing under him. It's a good challenge for us. And they've got a real clear objective that for us, we're going to need to play really, really well if we're to get a result that we want. What's that result going to look like? We'll start with Dave. Dave, prediction for this one.
Oh, look, it's becoming really hard to predict here, you know, Tottenham and what's going to show up, especially off the back of last night. Look, you're never, ever going to hear me say Tottenham will be defeated. So I'm still going to sit here, even though I don't believe it, and I'm still going to sit here and say Tottenham could come good. Do you know what? There's a slight feeling in me, the fact that everyone's mentioned Iraola as the job and then it being an audition, that, you know, we might actually turn up tomorrow, beat them, and, you know, maybe put you know, some fire on that sort of argument. Because one thing that no one really talks about when they mention the likes of Thomas Frank or Iraola, you know, when they compared it to Postecoglou this season, we're playing every 3 days. You've barely any time on the training pitch, barely any time to work on things or develop things, whereas these managers do, but no one talks about that. And I know Andrew's talking about...
It's a fair point. It's a fair point.
I know Andrew's talking about Iraola, you know, finding a way without Evan Nielsen to a degree, but they've lost... They're on worse form in the last 5 games than what we are in the Premier League, so he hasn't exactly found a way. And these are all things that you need to be taken into consideration. We can sit here and say Iraola's great for Tottenham, but there's big differences managing a club like Bournemouth than there is Tottenham Hotspur. Absolutely massive difference. The reality is, we bought Postecoglou in from Celtic to do what he done there. It didn't work. We bought Jose Mourinho in from Man United to do what he's done at every other club he's been. It didn't work. Same with Antonio Conte, by the way. So we can sit here and sell these pipe dreams, but the reality is they don't deliver at Tottenham because, again, the club is the problem. And we need to get the issue sorted out for any manager to work out at Tottenham Hotspur. But anyway, do you know what? I'm going to go Tottenham 2-1.
2-1 Tottenham after all that. Ash, what are we going for?
I hear what Dave's saying, and I somewhat agree with him. I'm not necessarily saying that Iraola will come here and do an amazing job, etc., etc. But I do see the similarities between having a team. I remember when Gary O'Neill left, and people were up in arms for Bournemouth. They were. Manager. And I remember he went on Sky Sports and he broke down how Spurs play and how he was going to defeat Postecoglou. And
guess what, Ash? He done it again.
and guess what? Do you understand? But with I remember like Eric Dyer was talking about Postecoglou saying he was the best coach that he ever worked under. And he obviously worked under Postecoglou. And he was at Bayern Munich talking to Gary Neville and actually said that the reason why he liked Pochettino is because he was in the gym, he was on the training pitch, and he said he talked about acceleration and deceleration. And you know, deceleration, that contributes to lack of injuries because, you know, Mickey van der Ven, how he sprints, how he needs to slow down. He said he was so detailed and so meniscus on the actual preparations of how they played and what they were doing. I was hearing that and I was like, sounds interesting. Sounds like we need a coach that's kind of on the pitch, touch tight. He said the body shape, you get us, move us in a certain position, and say the reason why you shape like that, that's the reason. And that's what I want from the coach, whether it's Iraola, whether it's the Stuttgart manager, whether it's a different manager from the Premier League. I just want someone that, you know, like when it's not in half time, when it's in game, and they sit and they've got the iPad. They've got the iPad and they sit down with a coaching team and they're looking, you know, like what Slot does. And he's looking. And, he goes, and then he comes out on the touchline and he sends the information. That's all I'm looking for. Do you understand? Not just stand there and the only way I can change my tactics is by doing substitutes. Like, come on. But coming back to the game, like I said, do agree with Dave. I think it's typical Spursy. I'm going to go for a draw. I'm going to fence it. I reckon that he might upset the apple cart and we somehow manage to get a draw. But if we don't get a draw, then I know the players, he's lost the room. But I think we'll get a draw, bro. 2-2. 2-2 I'm going for.
Ash, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We're going to hand Johnny over to have the last word on Spurs. Before I do, Spurs TV says the definition is doing the same actions over and over again. Gents, I'll give you Ange. I'll say no more. Oh, that's how a lot of people are feeling right now. I mean, going into it, what's your feeling on it? Johnny, close us. What are we going to go for?
Look, 18 months, same project, right? One, we have progression. One, we have regression. I know which one I'm in the camp for. I've enjoyed the Iraola journey, watching it develop and watching him develop players over the last 18 months, losing players. Dominic Solanke, who no one could get a tune out of. You know, he had him performing the best of his capabilities. And I've seen it with just about every single player there. And as Ash said, his ability to not complain about a situation, but adapt his tactics and his team to deal with the situation. Yeah. For me, that's what I want in my coach.
I think what will be interesting, Johnny, is that you come back and let you answer this point. He has had 11 injuries playing once a week. I just wonder how he will manufacture and work that if, you know, he was to come to Spurs and we did get European football. Because I tell you what, you know, with our injury record at the football club and, you know, whatever you think about the medical department, something we'd have to give there, wouldn't it, really? You'd have to, I don't know how they would navigate that. But
look, listen, you know, we know
it's a hypothetical.
It's hypothetical. Listen, we'll cross that bridge when it comes to it. All I do know is that Scott, who's been here 20 years, fell out with Ange Postecoglou because he told Ange, you know, this isn't sustainable. He left. It isn't sustainable. This system isn't sustainable. Puts too much pressure on the players. I don't think the system suits anyone. What I know is that, you know, Iraola, they train in a park. They get dressed in a porter cabin. They play in front of 11,000 fans with a tiny budget, and they're outperforming us. And that's all I want to know. I hope we win. We win. But I think if we come away with a draw, it would be a bloody good result, right? So I'm going to go for a Desmond. And I hope that we show some passion. I will take losing if we go down fighting. I can handle that. But if we go out in a damp squib, then I'm out.
I need to ask a final question to you before you go. It's been a really, really good show. It's been a passionate show, as they always are when we get these three great guests on. Final question to everybody. Just a yes or no around the panel. Johnny, will Ange Postecoglou be the Spurs manager at the end of this season? Yes or no?
No.
Dave?
No.
Ash has gone into darkness, and that's if he doesn't want to
answer his answer. No.
Ash has gone to his dark room to think about it.
Ash, will Ange be the manager at the end of the season? Yes or no? Will he still be here?
Manager, end of the season? No, I don't think. Summer, I'm not too sure. No, I don't think so.
But end of this season, you think he'll still be here or not? Will he make it to the end of the season?
He'll make it to the end of the season, yeah. He will make it to the end of the season, I think.
Yeah. It's funny. It's the first time I think we've seen that question being answered, you know, in such clarity there. There's been many that have been unsure about it. Look, I've got to say, it's been a really, really passionate show. One where, again, you know, at the moment, emotions are rightly high in the fan base. And there's a lot of love between these panels that we bring on here. And we love passionate debates. Everybody loves the football club. They care about the football club. I can tell you, Dave and Johnny love each other very, very much when we're not talking about Tottenham. This is what it is. This football club drives us insane. But I have to say, at the end of every show, we all want the same thing. And I have to again make this point. I'm sure many are acutely aware. It's never personal with regards to Ange Postecoglou. You know, everybody has wanted this to work so much, because if it works, it means Tottenham are successful. It means we are happy fans, right? So the reality is that we're at a point right now where I feel it's really, really sad that we're at this point again in yet another manager's journey where we are coming to that stage of the 17, 18-month period and again sitting here saying this is not working and it's changing. But I will finish with Dave's point that, as Dave has said consistently throughout this show, that there are bigger problems than just Ange Postecoglou at the football club. And until they are addressed, this football club is never going to ever get to where it needs to be. So let's see. Look, Bournemouth, of course, is a game we all want to win. It's a Premier League game. We need to win games. We need to go into Thursday with the biggest and best confidence possible. I want to say a massive thank you to the wonderful Ash Matic. Go and make sure you're checking out Spurs Kings TV for more and more. Him and Marlon have kept us sane this season. God, how they're doing it, I'm not sure. I want to say a massive thank you to the wonderful Dave at the Irish Hotspur. Make sure you're checking him out, especially, of course, for those videos that are dropping, and it's on match day as well. Make sure you're checking Dave out. And I want to say a massive thank you to my wonderful friend Johnny Hamme, who has tried to keep sane in a world where he's been shut down with Ange from half the country in different parts of the region, but he's still here and he's still battling. So, guys,
still unpopular in Australia. Still not popular in Australia, but I'm still here.
You might be banned from Oz, but we've sent him back to Cyprus for a good Solanke. Don't worry. I want to say a massive thank you to the wonderful Ash mate, to Johnny, and to David, the Irish Hotspur. We have been the last word on Spurs, guys. Keep safe, keep well. We're back with you after Bournemouth. It will get better. It will get better. Believe me, it will. We're gonna have holiday soon after this. We're gonna have a nice one at the end of the season. We've got to get away. We've got to get away before it kills us. From us all here, please keep safe, keep well, and as always, come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you